Hello and welcome to this O&DR Modurol video, rear parcel shelf removal and retrimming. This is video 190 in our series of XK8 videos. This video comes about because the fabric foam backing has degraded and become loose, or meaning the fabric has become loose on our rear parcel shelf, and it's quite unsightly and it really lets the car down. In order to remove it, the tools we used were a trim tool, a 10mm socket and wrench, and a Phillips or a cross screwdriver. In recovering or retrimming it, we used a scrubbing brush, a pair of scissors, some heat-resistant non-staining contact adhesive, and a very sharp knife. We're going to break this video into a bit of a structure, several chapters here. So we're going to talk quickly about the trim colour you should be using, part numbers, and the locations used on the parcel shelf to avoid you breaking anything. Then we'll actually show you how to remove the parcel shelf itself, remove its old fabric. We'll actually then show you how much fabric we used and advise how much fabric we think you might need for various retrimming in your XK8. Then actually cutting the fabric, recovering the rear parcel shelf itself and the speaker cover, and then finally some recommendations to ourselves and to others if you're contemplating doing it, and actually for when we do it again. Trim colours then. So we thought our rear parcel shelf was the same colour as the headliner, logic being it was all the same oatmeal fabric. So we purchased some extra fabric together with the headliner, which we're covering in separate videos, in oatmeal. We thought it was just discoloured by the sun, but we were wrong. You can see the headliner fabric there in oatmeal, and the rear parcel shelf we thought it was just a dirty oatmeal, if you would. It turns out when you look at the trim specs, and here's a trim spec chart for Classic for 1996 onwards, oatmeal interior actually translate to the rear parcel shelf being antelope, which is like a grey tanny colour. So it's not actually dirty oatmeal. We couldn't find antelope, and we'd actually already changed our carpets from sort of the browny beigey colour to black. So we thought we'd actually choose a black colour, and it was actually also advised by a fellow Jaguar enthusiast. Sorry, I forget your name. I was been looking for your name, but I couldn't find it. If you do remember who you are, please let me know. He actually contacted us and said, "Oh, if you're going to do your rear parcel shelf, don't consider light colours because you'll get lots of reflections." And he was explaining how automotive manufacturers tend to use darker colours, greys and blacks, to reduce reflections on the screen, and the same goes for the dash top. Hence, Jaguar used this grey tan antelope. Part numbers then. Our parcel shelf part number is HAA1200BB. There are some differences between the model years and the different premium audio and etc. Obviously, the first is that there's actually a speaker behind the speaker cover, and actually in some of the later cars you've got the child restraint fixings there. In our case, the speaker cover was a blank HJA1240AB, but if you're lucky enough to have premium audio, you'll have a big subwoofer there, and you'll have a different speaker cover, HJA1212CD. Obviously, the part numbers change a little bit as it gets later on. Next, then we'll talk about the locations, how the whole thing is put together. So there are actually 5 location points on the speaker cover itself. They're actually just trim clips. Those actually are matched to 5 location points or holes cut in the speaker shelf itself. Now that cover is only fixed by these clips. It's not screwed down at all. In our case, there's a blank where your speaker might be. There are 4 bolts holding that in place. And on the body, there are actually corresponding 4-off spring nut clips round the aperture. On the actual parcel shelf itself, you can see the 4 recesses where the speaker or the blank would fit, and there are also 2 screw holes at the front, and at the sides We'll go into this a bit more detail. The rear quarters sit on top of the parcel shelf itself, and they actually help to hold it down. On the rear bulkhead, there are actually 2 plastic inserts for those screws to fix to. The part number for those is it's the C319736. And just to being thorough, here's the view from underneath, just for reference. The removable parcel shelf itself then, very, very easy. Obviously, you need to remove the rear seats in order to access these 2 screws into the bulkhead. I'm not going to go into detail of that because I've gone into massive detail in video 188 rear seat removal. Should be a link in the top right hand corner. Take a look at that video and come back to us. You take your screwdriver and remove the 2 fixing screws. You then take your trim tool and leave the speaker cover out, but avoid the front edge of that because that's the part of the speaker cover has the longest tab location. That's sort of the primary fixing point, is at the front edge there where I've put the X. Once you've done that, you can access the 4 bolts using your 10mm socket. Obviously in our case there wasn't a subwoofer speaker. Oh dear, oh dear. There was the harness underneath, as it turns out. If you've got a speaker, lucky you. So remove those 4 bolts. Now the side quarter trims sit over the end of the rear parcel shelf, and this is really where you're going to break things if you're not careful. The actual rear quarter trim, as you can see here looking through the back window, has sort of a tab, or sort of a hand, if you would, or a thumb that actually grips the rear parcel shelf. So you've got to be careful. You can't just pull it inboard in car, you have to pull it along. I go into a lot of detail, a lot of detail in video 189, removal of the rear quarter panel. Please take a look at that video. There's going to be a link in the top right hand corner, and rejoin us. So once you've done all that, you should be able to pull this quarter trim forwards in car to release a sort of a hand grip thing, or the trim clip. You can see the overlap there. It's clearly sitting on top. Once the quarter trim is clear, you can remove the parcel shelf one side and it comes out really, really easily. Interestingly, you should be able to see that opening in the luggage compartment where the speaker might have been. And if you look through that, you can see the back, or the luggage compartment interior trim. And actually look down, you can see the top of the fuel pump and the tank. You can actually access it through there, but it is a bit tight. Removing the old fabric then. So the idea, removing the old fabric, is to use it as a template for cutting the new fabric. So it was really easy to remove in our case, and I'm just going to show you this just to demonstrate how this foam backing has just disintegrated. I haven't put it down. This is straight removing for the first time, and it literally not stuck down at all. Completely broken down. That foam has just turned to this brown dust. There was lots of the old foam stuck to the rear parcel shelf, it's a compressed board, and there was also foam stuck on there, and what we'd use is the scrubbing brush just to loosen it off. It wasn't stuck very tightly, and we did it outside to keep everything reasonably clean. We needed to remove the old foam from the fabric primarily as well to use as a template, and we did the same for the speaker. How much fabric did we use then? Well, we ordered, as I say, extra fabric for the headliner, for the parcel shelf from Headliner World. They charged £30. I thought it was quite reasonable, and we got quite a large piece of oatmeal fabric. It was 1750 by 1050 millimeters, and we laid out all the parts to see what we could cut out of it. Here's a sort of a CAD drawing of that. We were really surprised how much fabric we got and how many parts it covered. So you could get a rear parcel shelf, maybe a couple of speakers and a couple of A-pillars, which was really handy because I had to recover my A-pillars twice as well. So this fabric did come in useful. However, as we say, we actually changed our mind and went for a black fabric. We actually found some black headliner material. It was actually slightly narrow. It's 1400 millimeters wide, and they were charging £17 a metre, and this is in 2023 if you're looking in the future. So we bought just 1 metre 1400 by 1000. Obviously, it's quite a bit smaller than the original piece of fabric we got from with the headliner, so it wouldn't cover quite the same amount. However, it was just large enough for the parcel shelf and 2 goes of the speaker, because obviously the parcel shelf isn't a rectangle and the speaker cover is round or oval, so it just about fitted in. Cutting the fabric then, we used the old fabric as templates, as I say. We used sharp scissors to cut round. We actually added about 20-25 millimeters extra on top of the fabric just in case the fabric had stretched or shrunk. One thing to note when cutting the speaker cover, we'd actually bought a fabric with a weave or grain, so you couldn't just cut it any old how. You need to make sure the grain of the speaker cover is in line with the grain you've cut on the parcel shelf. So we made sure we did that. We sort of aligned the red arrows, if you would, and then we double checked it twice, cut once. Recovering. Now this is the process we used, and not quite sure if it was the right one, but this is what we used. I'm just showing you for reference. We moved outside and placed the parcel shelf on some boxes. The idea of that is we needed to stretch the fabric over, try and reduce wrinkles, need to get access all the way around it. So we put it on a box so we could, out in the open, so we could get a good access. We folded the fabric in half. The idea of this one is to do one half at a time, half the problem, half the issues in theory. Then we applied contact adhesive to approximately 4 inches or 100 millimeters to the parcel shelf and the fabric. I think we could improve this, but we'll go into this in the recommendations. I did try and fix the adhesive whilst it was slightly wet, assuming it might have a bit of movement or give in it. How wrong could I be? All it does, contact adhesive, in my experience, is when it's wet, it seeps through the fabric more. There's no give. As I said, the adhesive couldn't be repositioned after that initial contact, and it was very easy to wrinkle and really difficult to handle. I then moved on to the next 100 millimeter section, and we kept the fabric tensioned and folding over as best we could, applying light pressure to assist the contact and stretch. I should have worn a glove or a mitten to help avoid that point contact, because you can't help but press down, and if it's a little bit wet, that glue will seep through. Then I applied the glue to the final section. I finished it off. There was a lot of excess material gathered around the headrest, and I wish I'd have cut a little bit more material off here. So I've been quite generous around over all the edges, which did work. But around the headrest, less is better. Less fabric is better, at least add vents and gaps to suck up this excess material. We tried as much as possible to stretch any excess away. And then we did the other side, folded the material back on the glued side and repeated the process until the main surface was all glued on some bit like. We then flipped the overall parcel shelf over onto the same location, but this time we put a cloth or a cushion, again to avoid point contact, because I got the feeling that if I had something hard resting on something hard, the weight of the parcel shelf would indent the fabric onto whatever it was sitting on. I think that was true. Once we turned it over, we could access and work on fixing the overlapping edges. We removed the excess with scissors, and then we cut vents and gaps around the edges. We're starting to learn how to do it at this point. Applied glue to both the outer edge and the inner edge of that overhanging fabric, and then pulled it over, and I was quite happy with how that all worked out. That was quite easy, and moved around the whole thing doing the same thing until the edging was completely securely fixed. Then we flipped it over, and it didn't turn out too bad, but it doesn't really take close inspection, to be honest. Then we cut the clearance hole in the speaker area of the parcel shelf. We note here the speaker cover clip locations. We needed to cut slots in them to clear the speaker cover tabs as they get inserted through there. So you need to use your sharp knife to cut that material away from those areas. And then also the bolt clearance areas, you need to then cut that back and glue the material away. There were several parts of the partial shelf, no matter how careful I was, had a little bit of overspray of adhesive. I was panicking a little bit about this, but it was very, very easy removed by some white spirit on a rag. The glue, I'm not sure it was the glue or just the fact that the white spirit, but that was a really good solution. That worked well. Recovering the speaker was basically the same thing. We stretched the fabric, glued the edges as per the parcel shelf. The only additional thing is where the plastic tabs go into the parcel shelf, we had to cut the excess material away from those edges, again with a sharp knife. We had a couple of attempts at this. The second result was okay, but not perfect. Lots of lessons learned. Then we actually checked the whole thing assembled correctly. Obviously, you're going to make sure the tabs clear from the fabric, etc., before I get in the car, because once it's back in the car, it's very difficult to access with the rear window. Again, you need to insert the front tab first. So there you go. In my experience, it's really difficult to get a good finish. It looks okay from a distance, but I'll show you a few more photographs in a moment. So recommendations then. First of all, assembly is the reverse procedure of what I've shown you. A couple of things. When you put it back together, use a cloth to stop a thing falling down the back of your fuel tank, because in my experience it does take you quite a while to find them again. So lesson learned number one. Secondly, also use a screwdriver to help align those spring clip nuts, because they don't like to be, there's lots of variation there. You need a bit of help aligning those. There you go, there's a close-up picture of it. You can see lots of little indents. I wasn't completely happy. It's okay from a distance, but close up, I really was disappointed. Is there a better method out there? If there is, I'd really like to know, because I'm going to whip that parcel shelf out and do it again. So recommendations for when we do it next time. First of all, black. I was really happy with the colour. Black give a really good contrast, especially, as I say, with that black carpet. The fabric, next time I won't do it with a weave or a grain. I've got a feeling that weave actually gave the fabric a bit more strength. There wasn't as much give as maybe I like to, in order to stretch it over those headrest covers. Or so maybe buy fabric without a weave or grain in black. I would cut shorter overlaps around the headrests so that didn't gather as much. And finally, the main one probably is wait for the glue to fully dry. Really take my time next time. Don't be trying to do it all in a few minutes. Okay, so that's all part of a playlist we're doing on replacement of our headliner on our 1996 Jaguar XK8. We're trying to tidy everything up, to be honest, interior-wise. There's a list of videos about all those things we've addressed in the headliner video playlist. That should be a link in the bottom left-hand corner now. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you found that useful. If you've got a coupe, please like, comment, share and subscribe for more XK8 videos.